One day, a woman brought a limp duck into the veterinary's office, put the duck on the operating table, and the veterinarian examined the duck. Took out a stethoscope, put it on the duck's heart, listened carefully, and then he shook his head and said to the woman, "Your duck has passed away." And the lady said, "Well, how do you know that? He could be just pining away or in a coma." And the vet said, "Trust me, your duck is gone." And the woman said, "Well, you've not run any tests on him." Then the veterinarian raised his eyebrows and he went to the back and he brought back a black Labrador dog. The dog jumped up, put his paws on the table, and then carefully smelled the duck from top to bottom. Then the dog looked at the vet, shook his head, down, and then went into the back room. The vet then came back with a cat. The cat immediately jumped on the table and then sniffed carefully the duck from the top of his head all the way to the foot. The cat looked at the vet, gave a little meow, jumped down, went into the back. And the vet said to the woman, "Your duck is not pining away. He's not in a coma. Your duck is gone. He is passed away. He's deceased. Kaput. Your duck is dead. You have a dead duck." The woman looked at him, and then he wrote up his bill, and he handed it to the lady. The lady said, $150? You could charge me $150 to tell me that my duck is dead? The vet said, "Well, if you'd have trusted me, it'd only been $20. But you demanded a test. There's a lab report and a CAT scan. It's $150. Thank you. Very good. I'd like to start by quoting one of my favorite authors, Charles Dickens, from the book A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And that's what my past week was. It was one of the greatest weeks of my life. It was one of the worst weeks of my life. On Friday, just a couple days ago, I had to have a medical procedure, just standard operating procedure, that the nurse came up to me before this takes place and says, "Do you have a living will?" I thought to myself, you know what, I can't remember if I do or not. And she says, "Well, I'm going to need the name of a contact person." And I knew what she was thinking. She needs to know somebody who's going to take responsibility for pull the plug or not. So I started thinking, that's a big responsibility I put on somebody, make that choice. Then I finally came up with the name that I wanted. And let me ask you this question. What name would you put on the paper? Who do you trust with your life to make that decision? When we trust someone, we really put their life, our life, in their hands. That wasn't the first of one of my worst times. I'll give you now my second one. Monday, actually last Sunday, a week from today, Sunday night, I am in the process of becoming the almost good cook. as a confirmed bachelor now, I'm learning how to cook. And I made a nice steak, baked potato, vegetables, and I tried something new. It was stuffed mushrooms. And it tasted very good. Give myself a pat on the back. But about 10 o'clock, I noticed that I was having a little trouble breathing. And then I thought, that's strange. And a few minutes later, I'm having more trouble breathing. And so I go in the bathroom, and what's going on? I look in the mirror at my back, and I've got a really big welt. I look a little lower. There's another welt. I got a welt on my belly, a welt on my leg. I said, wow, I think I've been bitten by a spider. And I said, boy, you really got around fast. I said, my Lord. But then I started having more breathing difficulties. And I think, wow, this is getting a little uncomfortable. And then a lot of trouble breathing. Then I started having a little flashback when I was invited by my local draft board to serve in the New Action Army in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, in the summer. And any of you fellows that were in basic training, remember that one part where they put you in this room and they gas you? You have your gas mask on, and they put gas in there. Then the DI says, okay, take your gas mask off. And then you see how long you can stay in there before you have to leave. And you have to really not panic and how to breathe properly. And then you finally leave, and then I guess they'd call it today an EpiPen. Remember we took that? You don't pull your pants down. You don't have time. You just, boom, put it right in the side of your thigh. I was having flashbacks like that. And I can't breathe. So I got down like in praying position. You don't want to be on your back. You're going to be in trouble. So like in a praying position. And I was like that for almost an hour and a half. And then finally, I started to breathe a little bit better. And I had a very interesting flashback. While doing that, I remembered as a child that at night, I'd be on my hands and knees like this. And I'd be doing this one prayer that I was taught. And every night I would do it. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die during the night, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Something like that, very close. And I was thinking to myself, what if I don't wake up? And I started to breathe this a little bit better, but I was so tired. I just laid on the bed, and I thought, well, Lord, I'd really like to wake up in the morning if I can, but I was so tired. And it turns out I did wake up in the morning. And I went down to the doctor, and the doctor took one look at my back. Within 1 second said, that's not spider bites. He said, that's the hives. I said, what? He said, did you eat anything different last night? I said, yeah, I had stuffed mushrooms. She said, well, it's probably not the mushrooms, it's what they stuffed in it. But at any rate, she said, you had hives, which is a reaction. I said, I've never been allergic to anything. Well, you are now. And your reaction caused those hives. And the fact that you weren't breathing, did it occur to you maybe to go to the emergency room? I said, no. I thought it would go away. And she said, you shouldn't do that. I said, why? She said, because that could be fatal. Oh, that's never a good sign. So she made a prescription for EpiPens. So I did that. But it is a fascinating thing. And I was so fascinated by that, I got to try it again. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. You remember it. Thank you. That comes from Psalm 31:5. I always wonder where it came from. Many people have theories, but biblical scholars says it came from Psalm 31:5. Depending on your translation, it goes something like this. I entrust my spirit into your hands. Almost every Jewish child would pray this prayer every night before they went to bed. And throughout life, many Americans still remember that prayer. When I read the gospel reading, and Jesus, the last words he says, which are very important, he says, "Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands." And then he died. It's very important, that passage of Scripture. Who do we trust? And I would say to you this. In those times when we're running into trouble, focus on the Father and not your pain. But let me ask you, who do you trust? Can you really trust human beings? Well, I have news for you. There is no human being that can be right all the time. Now, I know some of you guys are going to get in trouble. Don't look at your wives. They're not always right. You can't be right on everything. You'd be perfect. Some people will really harm you. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you put your trust in, it can emotionally destroy you. In counseling, there are so many people you see. People that will say, "Hey, Doc, I wouldn't have believed it in a million years. I trusted him with my life. The last person in the world that I ever think would betray me was my husband." Wow. Just emotionally destroyed. Always looking for that question, why? Until they get it answered, it's really difficult. Really traumatized. God, our Father, is one we can always trust. We do not have to worry about being betrayed. Now, this word, entrust, I had to break out my Kittle's Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. I'm a geek. I'm minored in New Testament Greek. I'm not going to pontificate on this word. We're just going to make it very simple. It could also mean commit, but entrust. And it means, basically, to make a deposit. I'll make it very simple. To make a deposit. Today it would be like a safe deposit box in a bank. In a safe deposit box in a bank, you put your jewelry, money, whatever it is, your valuables. And the bank says it will protect it. You have our assurance. You are in good hands with us, right? And that's what it really means. But the point is, do you really trust God? Now, some of you may remember your first child. Anybody, if you can remember your first baby, raise your hand. Oh, we can remember them. How did you go about choosing a babysitter? Did you just take somebody off the street? You're gonna put somebody in charge of entrusting them with the care of your first baby, your only child? Who is this babysitter going to be? You're exactly right. There are many, and then Carrie, you'll have to think about this too. There really are today many young women, they're not going to have a babysitter because they don't trust them, regardless. Now, it was their first baby, but you're right, Joan. Grandmas, generally, that's when they come into action. Just don't wear them out. Because if mom and dad take care of the baby, I can breathe easy. Why? I know them. I know they raised me. I know everything about them. They would never hurt my child. They would never, ever neglect them. So you feel safe. You go out to a restaurant, you feel safe. Now, when it comes to God, Sometimes as a pastor, I always ask people when they're going through a medical emergency or a crisis, and I said, how's God in your life? And a lot of people say, well, not quite so good. They're disappointed in God. And it's sort of like, well, I'm going to put him aside for a little bit. But we have to know the Lord, don't we? I mean, how do you put your trust in God if you don't know God? And so we have to not just know about God, but to know God. That's why Jesus says to begin our prayers, which way? We begin with our Father. Almost every religion in the world, thousands throughout the beginning of time, God is someone out there, powerful and distant. Our Father is intimate. In fact, that word, pater, literally means daddy. God is love. It's not just an adjective to describe God. God is love. And God is daddy. When you have a problem, remember as a child, assuming your father was a good man, and you come to Dad, and Dad would listen to you, and Dad would make you feel a little better. In the same way, when we are running into difficulties, we are to go to our Father. Remember what Jesus said. He focused on God and not his pain. Also remember, this was 3 o'clock in the afternoon and everything became dark. And what I see from this is that it is in our darkest hours that we learn things about ourselves. It is in our darkest hour when our back is against the wall and we feel there's nothing that can be done. That's when we learn about ourselves. That's when we learn things. And that's the point when we turn to God, our Father. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, I'll just paraphrase it. Very important verses to me. And the Apostle Paul is saying these words to the Corinthians. Brethren, I would not have you ignorant. But when we were going through Asia, we became afraid for our life. We were overwhelmed. We were powerless. But that was good. It taught us to put everything in the hands of God, the one, only one, who will save us. That's an important verse. And what it's saying is this. It's hard to believe, but it's been 2 years since my wife died. I think July 18th. 2 years. Time went by pretty fast. I think I said this before, but I want to say it again now. When I did the eulogy for my wife, when I came back, Brother Bob said, Al, you're not supposed to do that. But I did. But I don't remember anything, and I didn't take notes. I don't do very many notes. But when I came back, I had trouble with my memory. I've got a great memory, but I couldn't remember things. It just wasn't clicking. And after 3 weeks, I came back. And every Saturday night for the next several months, I spend the whole day, and I'm trying, if I can just memorize that crummy joke. That's my biggest thing, if I can just memorize the joke. And I go to bed every night on Saturday night thinking, this is going to be a disaster. You know, I don't even think I can be a minister anymore. I couldn't do it. It's a disaster. But I'd wake up Sunday morning, and all of a sudden, things clicked. But every Saturday night for several months, I went to bed thinking, wow, I'm going to be up here, tell my joke, and that's it. I won't be able to say anything. what was happening is this. On those Saturday nights, there's no one going to help me. Ron can't help me. Jamie can't help me. How are you going to help me? No one can help me. My back is against the wall. There's nothing I can do. And so, in many words, I would say, Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands. Nothing else I could do. There was nothing else I could do. But when I did that, I learned many things. And it's true. When we entrust our spirit into God's hands, then you learn about faith. Because God keeps his promises. He will come through. What is it in our darkest night that we worry about? In our darkest nights, it's our worries. We worry about money, relationships, family. I always like to talk to the great-grandmas. I don't worry about anything except my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids. And there comes a point in time when you are so overloaded emotionally that you just say, God, I can't go on. I can't do this anymore. And at that point is when you need to say, Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands. Otherwise, my grandson, Johnny, I can't worry about him anymore. I'm going to commit him into your hands. And then I've got to let this go. And that's what this passage is saying to us. In our darkest period, when there's nothing else we can do, nothing, no one can help us, that's when we simply say, Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands. And knowing that when you do that, the assurance that God will be there. In many ways, I've become a more compassionate human being, and I've grown in my faith. And I know that when we do that, God will provide. God will take care of it. You see, everything works out if you're a Christian. Things will work out. But it's having that faith. I believe it 100%. And when you have that faith, no matter what it is, no matter how horrible it is, you have to give it to God. And you simply say, Father, I entrust, I believe in you 100%, I entrust my spirit into your hands. And I believe God's got pretty big hands, doesn't he, Rod? He's got the whole world in his hands. God can take care of it. God can handle it. Don't focus so much on your pain. In those moments, like Jesus, focus on the Father. Father, whatever it is, finances, relationships, children, teenagers, whatever it is, Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands. And then relax, knowing that God is going to be there for you. Amen? Amen. Amen.